Greetings and welcome to the Charlestown Navy Yard. This area of town was named after the beloved King Charles when we were still very, very British. It was the area's capital and extended quite a distance north. Over time it shrunk and became a neighborhood of Boston. For a few minutes, just make believe that we are back in 1812. No electricities, no phones, no radios, no internal combustion engines, no diesel or steam engines, no refrigeration, no trucks, no trains. Everything was done by brute force. It was a different time. I'm Amos Binney, a naval agent for the Port of Boston. I was appointed by President James Madison, 4th President of the United States. My position is that of civilian, and I answer to the Secretary of War. When I took this position, the Secretary of War was John Armstrong. He was replaced by James Monroe after the burning of Washington, D.C. My job is to procure and provide anything and everything that any, quote, public U.S. Navy ship may need. The USS Constitution, a 44-gun American frigate-class ship, is home ported here, and she was my primary responsibility. In many ways, I was very fortunate in that Boston was well established as a military port, having supplied and supported the British Navy for over 200 years, and USS Constitution during her construction and launch on October 21st, 1797. It would be normal procedure to provision a ship for a 6-month deployment. This would mean 101 cows, 338 pigs, 47,000 gallons of water, and much, much more, all properly prepared and packaged. This took time. The cannonballs that were used by Constitution were cast at the Charlotte Foundry in Middleborough, Massachusetts. I also had to be ready for a ship to return to port at any time, perhaps after a battle. In such case, I had to be ready with materials needed for repairs and replacements. We were at war. This is a good time for me to tell you a little story about my arrival in Boston, early September 1812. When I looked out into Boston Harbor, I saw 5 of the United States' 6 frigates, with USS Constitution anchored in the harbor. After returning to port, victorious over HMS Guerriere. These frigates were the backbone of our Navy, supplemented with many smaller ships. I was presented with this overwhelming situation. I needed to get these ships back to sea. The only saving grace was that Constellation was still down in Washington, D.C., and not in Boston. Constitution's Captain Hull was the hero being celebrated at parties all over town. He was relieved by Captain Bainbridge as the new Constitution commander. Now, Bainbridge carried a little bit of baggage as he lost his ship, the USS Philadelphia, off the coast of Tripoli by grounding her in 1803. The locals took the ship and captured the crew. Constitution's crew were a little bit worried about his abilities, but Captain Bainbridge was determined to take his new assignment to war. He demanded new masts, yards, and all new standing rigging. This was a huge project. Constitution had to be warped, that is, dragged, to the Charlestown wharf to make repairs and receive provisions. My predecessors were thinking ahead. Virtually everything needed was already here, so I was able to get Constitution seaworthy by the end of October. On the 27th, she sailed. Now I needed to get to work on the other 4 frigates in port. I relied heavily on my clerk, who oversaw all the packaging, marking, testing, and inspection of everything destined for a ship. When I first arrived in Boston, there was not even a clear path for me to get money needed to accomplish these tasks. So I did borrow quite a bit on my own name. Eventually, Washington granted me a cash warrant of $33,000. That was good, but that didn't last very long. How did I pay suppliers? Well, the Spanish doubloon was still the universal international currency of the day. We had been a British colony for 200 years, so there was still a lot of British pounds floating around. No real national U.S. currency had yet been established. Printed currency was from individual states and local banks. I would use whatever method best suited my supplier. In early 1813, I still had 4 frigates in port, all screaming for attention. It was a bitter cold winter, making it very, very hard to get our Navy to sea. Then at the end of February, Constitution came back after defeating Java. Oh, I had my hands full again. At this point, Bainbridge was made Commandant of the Charlestown Navy Yard. The Constitution was then handed over to Captain Charles Stewart. She was back at sea soon and made numerous return visits for provisions and minor repairs. She did not see serious action again until 1815. In that meantime, she did a lot of commerce raiding. In 1815, Constitution came across 2 British frigates, HMS Cyane and HMS Levant. Captain Stewart was brilliant and made short work of both British frigates. He returned to Boston victoriously, only to receive the news that we were already at peace with Britain. Whoops. Well, all of Boston celebrated anyway. I continued on, but things quieted down considerably for me. We were no longer at war. Napoleon was exiled, and our country had doubled in size. Any questions?